Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Joel Hunter, host of Power Talks, empowering you through the voice of truth. And on today's program, the reason I'm smiling is because these are some of my favorite people on the planet Earth. And I can't wait for you to get to know them, because we're going to talk about the future forms of the church. But let me just do some introductions here. Chad Turnbull is one of my very best and long-term friends. You know, long-term, he's a young man, but you know, in terms of really working together and working for years and years together, Chad's been a very close buddy of mine. He's a multi-businessman. He's been in the ministry forever, but part of his ministry is business. He's currently, where are you, Chad? The real estate advisor at Engel and Volkers. But he's also the co-president of Storyville Coffee. That is a company that was founded for profit and for good. But I've known him, as I said, for many years, and just really am a great admirer of his. Julie Mount is a microchurch leader. She's been married to her husband for 15 years. They have 3 great kids. But she also has a master's degree in elementary school education, so she's got her hands full with this panel right here. But she is a board member of Crowded House Network, which is a microchurch confederation. And so we're going to be talking about that. And then Sean Welcome. I love this guy. He's not just a microchurch leader. He's very much like myself in that he is a performance poet and spoken word author, like myself. I mean, we just, rap isn't even the right word anymore.
You're doing great. You're doing great. Continue on. Fantastic.
Anyhow, he does a lot of stuff in the community, but he's also done like 20 NBA commercials for the Orlando Magic and performed in countless faith-based functions, but just as a first-rate intellect and person. So anyhow, with that, those introductions, it can only go down from here because I've put you all on Mount Olympus, and now you have to talk. Chad, let me go to you first because you know a lot of the bigger picture stats about what's happening with the church and church attendance and membership, and especially with the new generation. Could you just recite a few of those for us that aren't familiar with the challenges facing the institutional church these days?
Yeah, happy to. The short of it is just that it's sort of the largest exodus from the traditional church that we've seen in our country, really in history. And the younger you are, the less likely you are to attend church. The interesting thing, though, at the same time, in addition to the downside of, you know, kind of wringing hands going, oh man, you know, church attendance is significantly on the decline. Small churches just on a weekly basis are going out of business because they don't have congregations large enough to sustain a professional pastor and the facilities and all of that. There has been a rise and increase for the first time that we know of at this scale that are committed followers of Jesus with no church affiliation. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of, you know, you look at the numbers on a Sunday morning and say, well, they're declining significantly, but actually studies at the same time are showing that committed Christianity within the United States is also sort of on an increase. And so it's led to a new group of people that we're really particularly interested in, called the de-churched. Mm-hmm. It's not the unchurched that we've focused on, those that haven't ever been in the door, but it's the de-churched. And actually within Orlando specifically, it's the 6th most de-churched city in the country.
Wow.
And so almost 50% of people that you encounter on a daily basis have been part of a church community at some point or another and decided, no, that's not actually what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something different, and they've stepped away from it.
Yeah. So part of the lingo is that I've read there are the nuns and the duns. You know, there are the not affiliated with anybody, any established religious body and been there, done that, and I'm now no longer involved. Got burned out or just didn't see the point anymore, and so it's not that they've lost their faith or that they don't have any faith. It is they haven't found a fellowship that really particularly suits where they are right now in life. Julie, you were a part of a mega church for years. I was your pastor for a good number of years.
Yeah. Still a part of that.
And so, well, there you go. But you have transitioned because it made sense for your family into more of a home church type setting. Could you tell us about that transition?
Yeah, sure. We'd been exploring it with some friends that we attend church with. And just after talking about the idea of a microchurch and how we can live out our faith in our home daily, we just decided that it was something that would work for us. We gathered some families together. We're now living out our faith, not on a Sunday morning in a chair, but around a table, in various rooms in our homes with our kids, through chaos and noise, and it's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, we have 13 kids currently in our small church, ranging in age from 2 to 12, almost 12, she's almost 12. And just the amount of interaction we have with them, sure, they get some playtime, but they see us knowing each other and knowing the Lord and figuring out how to live our lives faithfully to Him.
Now, before I come to Sean, could you, I mean, I can just hear people going, I wonder what the church, I mean, how does that church do worship? What do they do?
Right, so we share a meal once a week on Thursdays. Everybody. We have grown to be quite large, so instead of sitting at a table, we open up our living areas and all the kids sit on the floor and the adults sit in the chairs, and there is the relationship part of it all, right? We just talk. We are very intentional as parents to sit next to someone's child who isn't our own, just to figure out how their week's going.
Oh, that's cool.
I believe, as well as the other people in the church, that it's so important for our kids to have other adults that they can trust and go and talk to about the simple things and the difficult things.
Yeah. When I grew up in a small town, and you didn't just have two parents or one parent. You had whoever was around you, the adult that was around you, not only would feel the authority to correct you, but they knew your parents and grandparents and your whole family, and so you had that extended family. There was a real sense of community there, and a sense of safety on the one hand, but real frustration because you couldn't get away with anything on the other.
And unfortunately, in the day we live today, you don't see that as often, right? I mean, even in our neighborhood that we've been in for 3 years, I don't know that someone down the street is going to be looking out for my kids.
Yeah, right.
So to have such a close community that we share, faith with, is key.
That's Sean. You as a performance artist, you have even a different life than most people, and so, like, how do you do your faith in your particular venues of interaction? How does that work?
Yeah, I think over time people just respect you for who you are and where you stand. There can be maybe the perception that if I say anything that's biblically based in a secular environment, that you'll be like ostracized or what have you. But I've found that not to be the case, and I don't only do like in terms of my way of communicating themes in the gospel. I mean, it's a myriad of ways that I communicate that, and if that's done consistently and over time, people just kind of respect you for where you are. So for me, that's been grounding, and just the inner work of being comfortable with that, with being who I am as a Christ follower and a performance artist, and there hasn't been much challenge with that.
So how do you follow? I mean, there's there are different, circles of intimacy and friendships. How do you go from kind of the outer circle of people who see you as an artist and see you and hear you and really get something out of what God communicates through you? But how do you, where's your inner circle when it comes to the fellowship of the church? How does that happen?
Well, the closest example I would be the open mic night that I host on Tuesdays at Dandelion Community Cafe, downtown Orlando. And it's really just an open mic, inviting people to come up and share what's on their heart and what they're going through. And it's a mixture of intellect and comedy, and it's a kind of a hodgepodge of all of that. And people do feel a sense of community. They feel a sense of belonging. There's things that happen at the open mic night that wouldn't happen in a traditional church, such as, I want to hear what you have to say. Like, can you imagine a pastor? Hey, come on up. Like that. No one's like sharing their stage, right?
Yeah.
And so, so that gets to happen, which is, it has a deeper effect in terms of building community, and I get to experience that. I get to hear where people are and ask the Lord for prayer points, like how can I connect with this person? But I start from that angle first. It's like, I value you. I care that you're here. I'm glad you're here. I want to hear what you have to say, and that communicates a level of just dignity that we're all deserving of.
Let me ask, Julie, let me ask you this. If there are kids in the circle of adults that are from 2 to almost 12, different families. Every family has a little different style of raising their kids, and the kids are wired a little bit differently. As the adults talk, I mean, is there ever a time when you go, I'm not sure my kid's ready for that yet, or what do you do? How do you do that?
We have to kind of set those aside.
Okay.
This past week we were talking 2 weeks ago we were talking in Romans, and it wasn't an appropriate thing for the kids to hear.
Okay.
So they go and do their own thing, color, or sometimes the kids get out the Nerf guns, and things can get a little crazy. So there are definitely times that happens. What we try to do is go over scripture and have the kids listen, and then have them say, hey, this doesn't make any sense. And then, we can talk them through that. We learned that actually at a community conversation one night, and then we thought that was a great idea.
Yeah.
So we started doing that, but it's not always appropriate.
Yeah.
I have a middle schooler, and she can listen in on more things than the young ones can. But we work it out. Sometimes
let me ask this. This is a really sticky question, Chad. I know you, Becky and I are wired very differently, but both of us are like introverts. And so a small group is a little bit more threatening than just a large group is, because people will actually turn and talk to you. And it's like, okay. You and Mandy, I've known you both since you were young. I've known her since she was a little girl. You are this buoyant people person, never met a stranger. And Mandy is this introverted, intellectual, brilliant, deep thinker. Not that you're not brilliant, but, and so how is this? How does a mix like that deal with Christian fellowship? Because in a larger setting, in a traditional church, you can kind of hide if you need to, or you can have as much fellowship as you want. You can stand in the foyer and just meet and hug everybody. But it's tougher for an introvert. So how do you deal with, if you do go to a smaller micro church, how do introverts deal with that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's surprisingly it's the reverse.
Okay.
I think it suits those that are introverted, because actually what's happening in a microchurch is an intentional long-term investment in a specific group of people.
Wow.
So it's not about what you attend. This is this gathering that we attend. It's no, we're gonna invest in this group of people, and over time, those relationships grow deep. And actually, it's usually the introverts that lead us there. Me, never met a stranger. I'll have 1,000 surface conversations and then realize, oh man, I don't know anybody. And Mandy will sit down with one person and really get to know them. And then on the drive home, did you know? No, I didn't know that. You know, and she'll tell me all about this. And then you know, you come back. And so actually, what it is just that decision of, okay, of all the people in the world, God has placed us providentially, for whatever reason, in these relationships. And so we're going to very significantly invest in these people and these relationships and get to know them, and you have to give it time. You don't just walk in and like, hey, here's all of who I am. You give it time and develop. But that's because at first introverts are like, whoa, I don't know. No, you just go slow. But you don't not trying to invest in 1,000 different relationships, just in a handful.
I got you. Well, if somebody is, let's turn this practical. Somebody's sitting at home going, you know, I'm kind of missing something in my experience, you know, right now. Either I don't have a fellowship, or I got a fellowship that's just, you know, it's more of a burden than it is really, really taking me deep with the Lord, and I need more, you know, I need more of a challenge, or need at least something different that will help me get closer to Christ. How does somebody who is just listening in go, well, how would I form a group like that, or find a group like that? I mean, what are the practical steps of just either convening a group and a conversation about Jesus and about each other's lives, and sharing, you know, prayer concerns and so on and so forth, or finding something like the Crowded House Network and, you know, would you get me set up in my neighborhood? How do you go about this?
The first thing, just to jump in for the way that most groups get started, is one person.
I was going to say it's almost the exact same thing. Is that introducing that person to a person that they can connect with is where that real work and inspiration really happens. I think that like Western American church, there's been an overemphasis on the building, on the weekend services, and so even those outside of faith communities would look into that and say, if they're not doing that, then then they're not a Christian, or they're not walking with the Lord. Where that's very not true. Like that's an aspect of our walk is fellowshipping with other believers, but the real deep work, the connectivity, our experiences with the Lord do come from those more intimate relationships. So I think everything that we're talking about, kind of not disregarding the traditional church, but placing just as much as an emphasis on these closer connections is, I mean, it's...
Well, and taking responsibility for. I mean, because that's, I think in both of your stories, I hear that.
And making a commitment toward.
Because I'm kind of moving away from sort of this idea. And that's what I think people bump into, where they go, it's just that over individualization. Where it's like, I'm going to show up, it's this me and Jesus kind of thing. And then through the week, I'm going to live this out on my own. And I'm trying to have a good quiet time, and I'm attending. And it's like, gosh, is there anything bigger than me?
And I think people in general want something simple, especially those maybe don't want to be all the way in, would prefer something simple, packaged, do this, check the box off. The intimate relationships, more intimate relationships, really knowing people, like the example with your wife, kind of getting to know folks, is I'm losing my thought here. It requires more work than we're willing to do, but it gets more done for the soul.
Fruit is found. That's what people find. They start going, okay, I'm going to try to create this. I'm going to invest in this. I'm going to put in some effort here, as opposed to I'm going to sit back and receive. And then all of a sudden they're going, well, my faith's really coming alive. And it's like, right, you're actually putting it into action.
Let me ask you, Julie, when you got involved with the Crowded House Network, was that with people that you already knew, or were there some that you didn't know?
Yes. Originally, it was 2 families. One other that I knew a little bit.
A little bit.
We've had 3 other families come in that we didn't know.
Okay.
And
how did they come in?
How did they come in? Well, actually, they came in through a small group initiative.
Okay.
At the church, because
Okay.
we put ourselves out there at the church. So they've come in, and it's actually been great. You know, they show interest, and we say, hey, we'd love to have you. You know, why don't you bring some bread this week, and you know,
Great.
we'll join in dinner, and we share with them what we're studying that week, or they come in, and it's been great.
Okay.
The one challenge that we've talked about is, we have this group of families that are close, and we've been meeting for a year, and so there is relationship already formed, and we
Right.
know each other well. So how do new families come into, if you will, our circle, our church,
sure.
and not feel like a new family?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we've had people come in and then not come back.
Yeah.
And we know that we can't take that personally.
Yeah.
It just wasn't the place for them.
Sure.
But we I personally work really hard on, if they want to be here, great, we want you here. Let's do this thing together.
Yeah.
There's a cool story of actually it's happened in a couple of high schools around, where there were a couple of students that got together and said, gosh, we're gonna put our faith into action. Like, let's do this. We get it. And so at lunch, they look for students that are sitting alone. And they're actually forming the church on their campus by loving people that are out of place.
Yeah.
And so when they see somebody just 2 of them, when they start to see somebody that's sitting alone, they go and sit with them.
Yeah.
An interesting thing is watching that group really grow, because then the 3 of them go see somebody sitting alone, and this community comes and forms around this other person and invites them
That's
in.
very cool.
Yeah.
Just high school students.
Yeah, that reminds me too. I don't know if y'all remember Mr. Rogers. Those of you out there,
Absolutely.
but he always was very intentional and focused about the child. He had these great face shots. You're special, and really speaking to the individual. There was a fact that I learned about every beginning of his episode. There was a traffic light behind him that was yellow, and it was a subtle sign to parents to slow down. And I think that translates well here. And look how effective he was in all of the shows that have been built off of his legacy. So.
Yeah. How can we make it inviting and safe for people to explore? Julie, you said, there's some people who came to the groups and they didn't stay, and that's to be expected.
Right.
Because, you really are trying to find, Becky and I, for the first time in my whole life, I don't have a church home. When I transitioned out of Northland, it's better for the new leadership if the old leadership doesn't stick around. And so I've been going from church to church and loving it. I love all the different expressions of fellowship and the worship and all of that kind of stuff. But I know that I'm always the visitor. I don't belong, and I was made to belong. We're all made to belong, and so, but we all have people coming into at least our realm of influence that are looking for a relationship. They're not ready to commit. They're just kind of testing the waters out. How can you make sure that people feel safe enough that if they make a mistake or they spill soup on their tie or whatever, they'll come back?
We make mistakes all the time, so it's not a problem. There's pretty much chaos or something going on in our small gathering. It's getting bigger.
I think it boils down to expectations. I know at least in my context, right, if people are coming to a poetry night or, what have you, or if they're going to a coffee shop or these other areas where believers just so happen to be or be leading, the expectation is not that I'm getting soul work. It's I'm going to have, some fun or hang out, and the effect of what we're going for, being in community, connecting with people, and hopefully, connecting with somebody of faith who can they can talk to or what have you would happen. So I think a lot of the thinking going into these settings has a lot to do with it. I don't have a clear answer for that.
No, it's good.
I think there's a point too that you see present in microchurches that we probably should draw distinctions for folks to help them understand. For a long time, the church has been formed primarily around music and preaching. And while you would not want to abandon that or any of that, what you start to see actually is the church forming, and I think it's the answer to your question, the church is forming a lot around service, and it's forming a lot around relationship.
That's right.
And with the service piece, one of the things that you see, I'm thinking of a microchurch here in town that just said, we're going to adopt this coffee shop. We're going to be here every Wednesday. We're going to share our stories as folks come in, and they've gotten to know employees and others. And so the part of how you help people feel comfortable is you go serve them where they are.
Where they are. This is, gosh, we got to end. I hate this. I want everybody to come back. There's more to say here. But this is the first century church. There were no buildings. There were no clergy. There was just the gospel and people who needed to know they were loved and people who needed to help those who were vulnerable. That's how the church was built, and I think that's how the church is going to be rebuilt. And so thank you, Chad and Julie and Sean, for what you're doing. And from somebody who is 47 years a pastor, I welcome the next phase of the church. The building and the pastor and all of the traditional trappings will still hold value for so many. But there are so many who just won't go there. And so the church, as it always has, needs to go out and surround them. So we're out of time. I hate this. But I want to thank you all and our panelists for joining us today on Power Talks. Remember, these discussions are just that, discussions among us. But we'd love to see you continue the discussions at home and go one step farther. Get involved. Because when Power talks, you're empowered through the voice of truth. See you next time.